Hey everyone, I realized as I was uploading the video interview that you're about to see that I hadn't actually set up who I was talking to or why we were talking during the course of the actual chat. Blame it on nerves, blame it on my first time with a Zoom interview setup, blame it on mere incompetence. I don't care. So I'm popping in here with a brief video introduction to let you know what's up. Last week I spoke with Eric Demeusy, who is an Emmy-winning visual effects artist whose feature film debut, Proximity, is now available to rent on demand. You can find it, for example, on Amazon Prime, courtesy of Shout Factory. It's a really cool adventure about a young NASA JPL scientist who gets abducted by aliens and ends up on the run, caught in a web of conspiracy. There's all sorts of cool nods to classic 80s movies that we all grew up knowing and loving. But the film is not beholden to a bunch of cliches and things like that. It really is its own thing and worth checking out. So I wanted to pop in here and just let you know that, yes, I'm talking to Eric Demeusy about Proximity. We get into a lot of stuff about the movie, of course, during the course of the interview. But yeah, and don't worry, there are no spoilers. I try to keep it as spoiler light as possible so you can experience Proximity for yourself. And I definitely recommend that you do that. You can also subscribe to this channel and like this video. If you do like the video, leave us a comment, and yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, here is Eric Demeusy. So before we get started, I wanted to pass on a hearty hello from one of your Imaginary Forces co-workers, Ryan Summers.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I DM'd him yesterday to mention that I was going to be talking to you, and he said that he was really excited that Proximity finally came to fruition. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I worked with Ryan a bunch at Imaginary Forces. It's been a few years now.
Yeah. So tell me about. I mean, you've worked on a whole bunch of movie and TV projects in title sequences and 3D animation and things like that. What was the moment where you decided I'm gonna do my own thing? I'm gonna make a not only a project but a feature length project using all of my expertise.
Yeah. Well, doing making feature films, that's always been my focus. And after graduating film school, I needed to get a job to pay the bills, and so it was between cinematography, editing, and animation. And I picked up animation and visual effects just to be able to learn it, to incorporate it into my own projects. So I became skillful enough with that to be able to get jobs doing title design and animation. And I kind of fell into that industry doing that for a long time. And in the meantime, I was still making short films and submitting them to festivals. And I was developing a feature film. And so that was always the focus. And I was trying for years to get this other project off the ground and just kept hitting a wall with it. And so, when I was thinking about ideas for something that would be, contained and something that we could go out and do for relatively low cost and with not a lot of resources, that's when the idea for Proximity came about. And then all the pieces just sort of fell together for that, and it just took off, and then I was able to just step away and go make it. So it was kind of always the goal, and then it happened, and then I jumped on it.
It's crazy to me that you say that Proximity was the kind of the B plan, the movie that you could pull together without a whole lot of resources, because there's nothing about it that feels, scrappy or small budget or, like you're cutting any kind of creative corners. Tell me about pulling all of that stuff together and making a film that, I mean, it's for a first feature effort. It's very slick. It's got you can tell there's some great cinematic influences there, but influences that you feel like you've made your own. It doesn't fall into a lot of traps that these sort of, I guess, nostalgia bomb pictures do. So in coming up with the idea and executing it, how did you pull it off in a way that made it look like something that could play, right alongside major blockbusters, which you've worked on?
Well, thank you. Was trying to stay as contained as possible, and trying to, one of the things was, for us to shoot in as many real locations as we possibly could, to try and keep it smaller, and just trying not to, I think for me, I feel like what happens a lot with these types of films, the pitfall is that they want you to make this, they want you to make Independence Day on an indie budget. And so I think a lot of people are really stretching really, really far to do something like that. And for me, it was always trying to pull it back and just imagine there are no visual effects. There's nothing crazy and special about it. It's just about this character and his struggle with trying to prove something extraordinary happened to him, and the kind of psychological struggles that he would go through to do that. And I mean, it was not without its challenges and difficulties. But I think we had the script, and we had what every scene meant to the story, and making sure that we captured that so that the narrative would still be intact while you're watching it, but being able to kind of improvise and if a location fell through, finding another way to do it, and just trying to always make sure that the story is there, and trying to do it in the best quality that we possibly could. Yeah.
So were you spending, I mean, when you plotted this whole thing out, I mean, the movie takes place on Earth, but there are some otherworldly elements to it that are peppered throughout the film, and some pretty spectacular effects shots. So were you having to budget and kind of spend your bullets and say, well, I can make part of a spaceship appear here, and I can do this other thing with an arm. We don't have to create these, fantastic virtual sets or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to be as sparse as I possibly could with the effects, because I mean, when I went into it, I was thinking that a lot of it would be done by myself, which a large chunk of it was, but we ended up needing to bring together a visual effects team to get through all the shots in time. And like with the creatures, for instance, like trying not to show them too much, and for a large portion of the film, it's more about the character trying to find answers. And yeah, I mean, it was trying to, having a knowledge of visual effects, knowing what is easy to do or what's challenging and expensive. I was able to kind of hone it in and figure out what's worth, putting the effort in when it came to the visual effects and the efforts that it takes to create all that stuff. Yeah.
So in conceptualizing these effects, were you able to, is what we see on screen, how close is that to what you had initially imagined?
As far as the whole movie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm specifically in terms of the effects stuff. I mean, it's very imaginative. Particularly, I'm sidestepping around spoilers, but I will say there's a scene towards the end involving an arm that is pretty jaw dropping, and it's not only in its conception but in its execution. So is that was that you came up with that and you were able to fully realize that, or did you have to kind of compromise anything in terms of any of the visuals?
No, that was actually as planned. But while we were shooting on set, we didn't have the device designed, and we didn't have the device designed, and we didn't have the full look development of what that was going to look like. Particularly, we had the concept and what was happening there, but so when it came, and this is the way that a lot of the visual effects were, whereas like when we were shooting that, we just had like a piece of green tape around the actor's arm, and we're telling them, what's going to happen, and they have no idea, like they have no clue what it's going to look like in the end. And same thing with our creatures and stuff when we're shooting with nothing there. And so yeah, that stuff was all was in the script and planned, and it was just a matter of so a lot of times if you have the budget, you can design that stuff out ahead of time, and you can have practical props and figure out the intricate ways to do it. But a lot of it, because there was just so much for us to get through in such a short amount of time, it was going in and knowing what was happening in the story and shooting it, and then going in and adding that stuff in later. But yeah, that stuff was all was planned out, and it was in the script.
Cool. Tell me a bit about casting the film. It's rare that I watch a movie, even, something that's more independently minded, where I don't see one like cameo or big actor name that kind of stands out. This is, from what I've seen, a completely fresh cast. Was that a deliberate choice on your part, or just tell me about the casting process in general?
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of a bit of both. Like, when it came to the lead character, um, to me, there's something unique about having an actor that you've not seen before and that you don't know who they are, because a lot of times, a bigger actor can have their own. You can't help but watch the movie and keep thinking like you're looking at Brad Pitt or something.
Right.
It's hard to separate the person from the character sometimes, and I think having a fresh cast gave us the benefit of like no pre-existing notion of that person, and being able to have them just fully embody the role, and in some ways making that more believable of a character. But yeah, I mean, the casting happened very early because this was in 2016, actually, at least our main cast we cast back then, because we were thinking that this would, we didn't have all the funds for the movie, and we were thinking we were maybe only going to be able to shoot like a 10 or 15-minute part of the movie, but it wasn't going to be a concept short, like it was actually going to be a section of the movie. So we went through a pretty rigorous casting process, and doing chemistry reads and callbacks and all that kind of stuff to find our main actors.
So who mentors you through that process? I mean, you're coming from one very specific end of the filmmaking, field, through, making the movie and pulling everything together and casting and writing and doing the visual effects work. Did you have any mentors or people that you reached out to or reached out to once they found out you were making a feature to help you along the way, or did you have to figure a lot of this stuff out kind of on your own?
Um, just figuring a lot of it out. Yeah, I didn't have any mentors. I mean, really, it was, I was surrounded by friends. So one of my producers on the film, Kyle McIntyre, is a friend that I met back in film school, and my DP, Jason Mitchell-Tree, is also a friend that I met back in film school. So the three of us like really knew each other very well. Like, we've known each other for over 10 years now, and I think being, making a film with your friends and with people that you're so closely connected to, I can, I can bounce ideas off of them. I can tell them things that I'm struggling with, and they're always there to give input and help and support. And I would say, like, with my DP Jason, he was there every single day on set, and he also helped write part of the story too. So when it came time to, we're on set and we're improvising with stuff, he knows the project almost as well as I do, and yeah, it was really just having as much support around from people that we all came up together through film school, and I think that was important. That was a big help.
In putting something like this together, were there any moments where, and I'm sure you mentioned this thing started in like 2016, at least as far as the casting goes. That's a long time from the time you're casting a movie to the time it's finally going to be released in a couple of weeks. Was there a moment, or were there moments throughout that multi-year process where you felt like giving up, or things were on the verge of falling apart, and how did you push through any kind of doubts you might have had?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens almost like on a daily basis, because there's just, by nature, making a film just starts off with it's impossible to make. It's impossible to get it off the ground. It's easier for everybody to tell you no, and so that's like, just from day one, that's always the reality of it. And then in this particular case, because it took so long, it was scenarios where we would be shooting and we would run out of funds. And, there's moments where one of our characters had long hair, and then we had to stop, and then he like shaved his head. So then you're thinking like, oh, great. So we're gonna have to like, make a wig or find a wig. We don't have the budget for that. It's gonna cost us like $5,000 or something. And then locations are falling through. There's always stuff. There's always moments like that. And that's, like I said, that's just like the nature of production. Like, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And so, I mean, I'm a pretty determined person in general. So giving up to me was the only way that you would fail. That was the only like guaranteed route for failure, is that if you give up. And it's I think you definitely have to have tough skin, and it's a difficult process, but I think just knowing that every filmmaker that's ever made a movie has gone through that, and that is what inspired me to continue going. And it's also the thing where it's like you've swam halfway across the pond, so it's like you're either going to go back or you're going to keep going forward. So you kind of you're in a position where you kind of have to keep going. You just force yourself into it.
Cool. And the reward is at the end, you've got, a really cool finished movie. Speaking of that, it was a couple of weeks ago now that the Department of Defense finally released some previously leaked footage of unidentified aerial phenomena. I wonder, Proximity has the heart as a film of a believer on a couple of different levels, one of which is very surprising that we find out towards the end. I wonder, is that purely a service of a function of the story, or is it a reflection of your belief in greater powers, extraterrestrial or otherwise?
I think it's a bit of both. I think, naturally when you're dealing with extraterrestrials in a lot of movies, and we're looking at, how would this end, and what's the big, you're always having to give a reason of why these creatures have come and what they're looking for. And the idea of, and I think this is just what sci-fi lets you do just in general, but this idea of a bigger purpose, and what our purpose is, and what, where all of this comes from, I think was a really fascinating idea. So yeah, I mean, I think it kind of came at a natural progression of when you're dealing with extraterrestrials, and what the reasoning is for them to come. We've seen a lot of sci-fi movies where it's like, they're coming because their planet ran out of resources or something, and you're thinking of extraterrestrials or intelligent life being 3 steps above the human race. But it was interesting to us that what if they were actually searching for something that we had, that they were interested in, and that the things that we aspire to, they've conquered, but the things that we may have and that we take granted for is something that they're searching for. And that was a fascinating idea.
Definitely. And I know you mentioned that this is sort of, the idea was that this could be a self-contained movie, but in that last probably 15 minutes, there's some ideas floated out there, some of which you've touched on. I won't get into any spoilers, but it almost demands a follow-up. Is there any a design to expanding the story of Proximity?
I mean, there's an idea of what would happen after this story and where it would go. And there was actually an idea to shoot kind of a stinger scene. But I mean, there's nothing written for it or any of that, but there is an idea of where the story would go after this. But yeah, that's about as far as we got. We didn't put any of that stuff in the movie, but you're right. Yeah, kind of, it's a little bit open-ended.
Cool. All right, man. Well, congratulations on the film. Like I said, I watch a lot of movies as a film critic, and a lot of things seem to be influenced by other movies, especially, or just like I said, nostalgia bombs from the 70s and the 80s. This is one of a few films that seem to be influenced by a lot of pop culture, but not beholden to it, and it's really refreshing. So, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And yeah, take care, and good luck. And we'll look out for whatever you have on the horizon. We'll be watching with great interest.
All right, sounds good.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.